This is more than a religious tradition. It is a radical reckoning with death, made in broad daylight and in full view, in the heart of Galicia, Spain. Imagine a scene straight out of a movie. Coffins marching down the street in procession, but inside them are not the dead, but living men and women, narrowly escaped from the grave, carrying their own potential mortality like a banner of gratitude. The power of this act is so intense, so raw, that its impact reverberates throughout
Avanzamos
Europe,
juntos, con
raising
fe
the
y
question,
lembranza.
what is the
Despacio,
real price
compañeros.
you would pay, or what radical promise would you make to come back from the brink? Before we delve into the shocking details of this ancient pilgrimage, let us unite our faith in a prayer. Write in the comments the names of those loved ones, relatives, or friends who you know urgently need divine intervention, as we will add each of these names to our main prayer of the Rosary. The peculiarity of this procession has roots that go back to the medieval period, surviving for at least 300 years, and manifests itself intensely every July 29th, when the small village of As Neves, almost on the border with Portugal, becomes the stage for this extreme manifestation of faith. The heart of this ritual is the so-called offered, those who have had a terrible encounter with death, whether through illness, accident, or despair, and have made a solemn promise to Saint Martha of Bethany. She is known, biblically, for having interceded with Jesus Christ so that her brother Lazarus could be resurrected, making her the ideal patroness for those in need of an intercessor in the most critical and desperate moments, when life seems to hang by a thread. The ritual is not easy, nor is it symbolic from a distance. It demands the utmost of the devotee, lying in a coffin, their own potential final resting place, and being carried on the shoulders of the community, covering the 2-hour procession under the scorching sun, in a profound silence broken only by the ritual chants of supplication. What motivates a human being to fulfill such penance is the realization that the bed of pain and the feeling of imminent death were not the end, but the beginning of a new path, sealed by fidelity to a vow made in the most desperate moment. The intensity of this promise is perfectly illustrated by the testimony of Jorge Contino, a local resident whose life was silently crumbling, corroded by alcoholism that brought him to the limits of his physical existence. His liver was destroyed, and his body, measuring 1.83 meters, weighed only 32 kilograms, a picture of fragility that anticipated his funeral at any moment. Jorge recounts being in the hospital, already hopeless, facing death up close, feeling his own life slowly slipping away, when despair reached its peak. It was at this 0 point that he made his pact, his final cry to Saint Martha. If, by some miracle, he emerged from that hospital bed alive, if life were restored to him, he would join the offered and make the long procession inside a coffin, publicly honoring the grace received with the radicality of his own testimony. This vow, born of pain and the recognition of his own mortal weakness, would become the anchor that would pull him back to the light. Jorge's return to life is a powerful turning point in the narrative of faith, for, in a way inexplicable to medicine or perhaps enhanced by it, he managed to leave the hospital, defying all the dark expectations that weighed on his deteriorating body, achieving an impressive recovery that can only be credited, in the eyes of faith, to the promised intercession. With his body rebuilt and his soul reborn, all that remained was to fulfill the sacred debt. And so, 2 years after that hospital bed, Jorge, who had nearly died, lay down inside his coffin, transforming that wooden urn, which represents eternal sleep, into the platform of his testimony. It is a decision that forces a complete reevaluation of existence, for, upon entering the coffin, one is forced to confront the vivid image of one's own fragility and the end that was postponed, but not eternally avoided. This is the essence of offering. Not only giving thanks for living, but publicly bearing the weight of the near-death experience as a symbol of rebirth. The experience of lying there, alive, inside the coffin, is not described as joyful or easy, but rather as profoundly impactful and unreal. Jorge, reliving the procession, describes the immediate sensation as one of truly dying, because the darkness, the slowness, and the intense heat, since the heat in Galicia in July can be unbearable, force the devotee into an involuntary meditation on what could have been their fate. The 2-hour journey, where the bearers, often relatives of the offered, as was the case with Jorge himself in previous years when carrying his uncle, must constantly shift positions due to the weight, is an act of profound humility and persistence. For some, the penance is even more intense. They opt for completely closed coffins, or walk the procession on their knees on the hot pavement, supported only by their cane or relatives, protecting themselves with improvised devices. This radical physical surrender serves as the counterpart of spiritual grace. The body suffers, humiliating itself publicly, so that the soul can reaffirm its new commitment to life and to the saint. The Santa Marta Procession, although focused on the offerings, is a grand community event, where faith blends with local identity and folklore. It is led by the image of the saint, escorted in profound silence and followed by faithful carrying large candles. But one of the most unique elements, which amplifies the narrative and transforms the supplication into art, are the singing pilgrims. These trios, made up of 2 women and 1 man, accompany the march, singing ancient hymns in the Alala style, a primitive form of Galician folklore. Their voices serve as poetic messengers of the devotees' prayers, singing phrases of power and hope such as, "Virgin Saint Martha, Queen of Glory, all who offer themselves leave with victory," or "Virgin Saint Martha, Star of the North, who gave life to those on the brink of death." This ancient music transforms individual suffering into a song of collective redemption, ensuring that the meaning of penance spreads throughout the village, teaching that the proximity of death is not taboo, but a powerful reminder of the precious opportunity of life. Beyond the spiritual center and the coffins, the festival is a powerful fusion of the sacred and the profane, characteristic of great Spanish pilgrimages. The local mayor emphasizes that the event attracts around 5,000 people, who come from far and wide to witness this curious celebration. In the days surrounding July 29th, there are soccer matches, barbecues, children's attractions, and plenty of traditional cuisine, such as the delicious octopus on moda de fira. This mixture, which may seem strange at first glance, only emphasizes that faith is not isolated from ordinary life. It is the center that connects all dimensions of human existence. The residents of As Neves feel a deep sense of pride and a strong cultural identity. For them, this celebration is not a bizarre tourist event, but something very internal, observed since childhood, manifesting pure devotion and public gratitude, transforming the image of death, the coffin, into the most powerful symbol of life and hope for the community. The procession leaves no one indifferent. It is tangible proof of how much a sincere promise can transform an individual and strengthen an entire faith. The enduring power of this tradition lies, ultimately, in the results it brings, not only to the spirit but also to the practical life of the devotee. In the case of Jorge Coutinho, he not only fulfilled his radical promise, but the impact transformed his life permanently. He claims that since that day, he has never drunk alcohol again. His promise of gratitude was not just a temporary ritual, but a true and lasting conversion. Today, the former addict who nearly died is in charge of organizing his own pilgrimage, testifying that the encounter with near death, symbolized by lying down in that coffin, produced a genuine rebirth. The Santa Marta Procession is the ultimate expression that, sometimes, it is necessary to confront the end and lie down with one's own finitude to fully understand and appreciate the gift of life, transforming the symbol of defeat, death, into proof of the victory achieved through faith and the power of the committed word, an indescribable feeling that remains forever etched in the heart's memory. It's easy to look at a story as extreme as that of the living coffins and think such devotion is reserved only for moments of mortal crisis. But the truth is that every day we are called to make our own promises and fulfill our pilgrimages of faith. You don't need to lie in a coffin to have your conversion. What you need is that same radicality in your daily life. When you forgive someone who has hurt you, it's as if you're releasing a dead weight that's weighing you down, promoting a rebirth of your inner peace. When you kneel every day, rosary in hand, persevering even in the drought of faith, you are fulfilling a silent procession, showing that love and trust in the divine are greater than all your struggles. Life requires us to have faith to see the light, as Saint Martha needed faith to see Lazarus rise from the dead. We need to cultivate forgiveness, patience, and charity as our daily rituals. True devotion is measured in the persistence to transform one's life for the better, even when the results seem impossible, keeping alive that promise made deep in one's heart. Strengthening our prayer community, please write once again in the comments the names of all those who need light, as we will add these urgent requests to the main prayer we will pray together. The radical act of lying alive inside one's own coffin, to give thanks for life, reminds us that true faith often requires a public, physical, and even painful demonstration of our commitment. But the miracle is not in the coffin, but in the life-changing experience it inspires. After learning about the depth and uniqueness of this tradition, the big question for our faith community remains. Do you believe that extreme acts of devotion, such as the procession of the coffins, strengthen the faith of the entire community, or that silent, daily conversion is enough to honor our promises? Leave your sincere comment below, sharing your opinion and your testimony. If this story touched your faith and curiosity, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more powerful stories about the impressive manifestations of faith around the world. May the strength of your daily promise lead you to victory.